The city had never seen the mighty Mafia boss tremble before. But on that unforgettable afternoon, the man who controlled entire streets stood silently outside a small classroom, staring at a single exam paper that had changed everything. His son, the boy everyone feared, had failed. Not because he was weak. Not because he was unlucky. But because one brave teacher dared to do what nobody else had ever done. Before we begin this emotional journey, if you believe that kindness, honesty, and second chances can change a person's life, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales for more inspiring stories. The story began in a crowded city where people lowered their voices whenever the name Vittorio Marzano was mentioned. He was known as the most powerful mafia boss in the region. His influence reached from expensive restaurants to hidden corners of the city where nobody dared question him. People respected him, but they did not love him. They followed him because they were afraid. Vittorio had everything money could buy. A luxurious mansion, expensive cars, loyal followers, and a reputation that made even powerful men step carefully around him. But there was one thing he could not control: his son, Cashin Marzano. Cashin was 19 years old, and everyone in the city knew him for the wrong reasons. He drove recklessly through crowded streets, humiliated people who crossed his path, and believed that his father's name was a shield protecting him from every consequence. Teachers at his private school avoided challenging him because they knew one phone call from Vittorio could end their careers. Cashin walked through school halls like he owned the building. Other students moved aside when they saw him coming. Some admired his confidence, but most secretly wished someone would finally stop him. That person arrived in the form of a new literature teacher named Serafina Vale. Serafina was not wealthy, powerful, or connected. She was a quiet woman in her early 30s who had spent her life believing that education was not only about books but about helping people discover who they could become. She came from a simple family and had learned from her own struggles that a person's past did not have to decide their future. On her first day at the school, the principal quietly warned her about Cashin. "Be careful with him," he said. "Others have tried to correct him before. They didn't last long." Serafina looked toward the classroom window where Cashin stood outside, laughing with his friends. "Maybe people stop trying because they only saw what he does," she replied. "Not who he could become." The principal shook his head. He had heard similar words before. But deep inside, he wondered if this new teacher understood what she was facing. When Serafina entered the classroom, every student became silent. Cashin sat in the back row, feet resting on another chair, looking completely uninterested. She began her lesson calmly, speaking about courage, choices, and the power of one decision to change a person's entire life. Cashin laughed. "You actually believe people can change?" he asked. The room became uncomfortable. Serafina looked at him. "Yes, I do. Even people who have already become who they are. Especially them." The answer surprised him. Most people either feared him or tried to impress him. Nobody had spoken to him like he was just another person. Still, Cashin decided to test her. Over the next few weeks, he interrupted lessons, refused assignments, and acted as if nothing mattered. When Serafina asked him to participate, he simply smiled. "You know who my father is, right?" "Yes," she replied. "Then you know I don't need grades." Serafina placed a book on his desk. "Maybe you don't need grades. But one day, you might need something your father cannot buy." Cashin looked at her with curiosity. "And what is that?" "Respect." Her words stayed in his mind longer than he wanted to admit. But Cashin did not change overnight. His pride was too strong, and his life had taught him that showing weakness was dangerous. He had grown up surrounded by people who praised his family name but never asked how he felt. His father was always busy. Vittorio provided everything except time. Cashin remembered being a child, sitting alone at a birthday party while his father arrived hours late because of business. He remembered asking why his father never came to school events. The answer was always the same. Important men have important things to handle. As years passed, Cashin stopped waiting. He decided if nobody cared about the real him, then he would become someone nobody could ignore. One day, Serafina announced a major exam that would determine the final grades. Cashin did not study. He believed the rules did not apply to him. When the results were posted, the entire school gathered around the board. Cashin Marzano had failed. The hallway went silent. Students expected Serafina to change the grade out of fear. They expected another teacher to protect themselves. But the score remained. When Cashin entered the hallway and saw the result, his face changed. For the first time in years, he looked less like a feared man and more like a hurt young boy. "You did this on purpose," he said quietly. Serafina stood nearby. "No, Cashin. You did it." The word struck harder than any insult. "I'm your teacher," she continued. "My job is not to protect you from reality. My job is to prepare you for it." Cashin felt anger rising inside him. Nobody had ever dared make him face his own actions. He stormed away and called his father. Within an hour, the school received a message. Vittorio Marzano was coming. The entire building fell into panic. Teachers whispered. Students moved away. Everyone prepared for the consequences. When Vittorio entered the school, the atmosphere changed instantly. He walked through the hall surrounded by fear and silence. He entered Serafina's classroom and placed the failed exam on her desk. "Explain." The word was cold. Serafina looked at him calmly. "Your son failed because he did not prepare." Vittorio stared at her. "Do you know how many people would change that grade if I asked?" "Yes." "And you still refused?" "Yes." The room became silent. Everyone expected anger. But something unexpected happened. Vittorio looked at the exam again. Then he looked at his son. For a moment, he saw something he had ignored for years. Cashin was not angry. He was embarrassed. He was hurt. And behind all that arrogance was a young man who had never been taught how to handle failure. For the first time, Vittorio questioned himself. Maybe he had spent so many years teaching his son how to win that he had forgotten to teach him how to become a good person. That night, Cashin sat alone in his room. He expected his father to punish him. Instead, Vittorio sat beside him quietly. "You hate me now?" Vittorio asked. Cashin looked surprised. "You came here to punish me." "No," Vittorio said. "I came here because I realized I never actually knew you." The sentence broke something inside Cashin. He had spent years pretending he didn't care. But hearing those words from his father hurt more than any punishment. "I wanted you to notice me," Cashin admitted. Vittorio looked away. "I thought giving you everything was enough." It wasn't. The silence between them was heavy, but for the first time, it was honest. The next morning, something unbelievable happened. Cashin returned to school. No guards. No expensive car entrance. No attitude. Just Cashin. Students stared as he walked into class. Serafina looked at him. "Why are you here?" He placed a notebook on his desk. "To try again." The entire class was shocked. The boy who once laughed at everyone was now asking for help. The transformation was not easy. Cashin struggled. He failed again. He became frustrated. He wanted to quit. But Serafina stayed patient. She taught him that success was not about never falling. It was about having the courage to stand back up. Months passed, and people began noticing small changes. Cashin apologized to students he had hurt. He helped a younger student who was being bullied. He started reading books instead of wasting hours trying to impress people. The city that once feared the mafia boss's son began seeing something completely different. They saw a young man fighting to become better. The biggest surprise came during a public school ceremony. Cashin stood on stage to receive an academic award for improvement. Everyone expected him to thank his father. Instead, he looked toward Serafina. "I failed my first exam because I thought failure was something only weak people experienced," he said. "But my teacher showed me that accepting your mistakes is the first step toward becoming stronger." The audience became silent. Vittorio sat in the front row. His eyes were filled with emotions he had hidden for decades. After the ceremony, Vittorio approached Serafina. "I came here prepared to destroy your career," he admitted. She smiled slightly. "And now? Now I know you saved my son." Serafina looked at Cashin, who was laughing with other students. "I didn't save him. He chose to change." Years later, people still talked about the day the mafia boss's son failed an exam. But they no longer remembered it as a moment of shame. They remembered it as the day one honest teacher proved that courage could be stronger than fear. Cashin grew into a man who used his influence to help others instead of controlling them. Vittorio changed too, slowly learning that power without love leaves a person empty. And Serafina continued teaching, carrying the same belief that had guided her from the beginning. Every person has a story nobody sees. Sometimes all they need is one person brave enough to believe they can write a better ending. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to life. Before the story ends, leave a comment with the words, "Everyone deserves a second chance," if you believe kindness can change even the hardest hearts. Because sometimes the person everyone has given up on is only waiting for one person to believe in them.